Do we have any idea of how many students are joining this class? It's on YouTube. Okay. Okay. And they'll have some way to send in questions? Okay. Been an interesting day for your uh, fearless leader, Vedasar. He's been really, really, really busy. So it wasn't until uh, later today notice was sent out of the topic and the time and everything. So whoever is with us, thank you. The topic, as you see on your screen here, is resilience in the face of reversals. And this word reversal is something that Srila Prabhupada was fond of using. Reversal, another word could be like misfortune or something unexpected, kind of like you're moving along. You get up in the morning and you're moving along in the course of the day in a certain direction with a certain plan. And the next thing you know, you're heading in the opposite direction, like a head-on collision or something like that, and something unexpected, something unpleasant, some misfortune comes your way. You had no idea. That's how he uses the word reversal. And we've all experienced some of that, if not too much of that. Here's a few visuals and a little dictionary definition of this word resilience. Resilience in the face of reversals. It means the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. Those are just dictionary definitions. So here's an image of a tree being blown really heavily by the wind. Now we don't know if it just kind of grew that way after a long stretch of wind, or there's a big wind came and it bent the tree over like that. So when that happens in your life, do you bend or you break? And resilience means you bend, you don't break. A classic example of resilience is a rubber band. It's elastic. It stretches and then it stretches back, and then it stretches and then it stretches back. That's resilience. On the human side, there are two important factors that make for resilience. Simplicity. Simplicity is a nice term, it's a nice quality. And austerity. So simplicity can mean different things, but the intention here is minimizing the number of things that are around you or you need to have around you so that you can be peaceful, contented with your life, and you're moving along with life, streamlining and keeping things simple, not complicated, not cluttered, clean and simple. So that's both outside and also the heart that's inside. It's sometimes said that spiritual life is simple for the simple and difficult for the crooked, or complicated, or crooked. Simplicity. It's if you read Bhagavad Gita, you'll find it's one of the qualities of a person in the mode of goodness. Straightforward is another word that's used in exchange, or not exactly synonym, but similar. Straightforward, as opposed to crooked or deceptive, or just very straightforward, simple in heart. And austere. Austere doesn't mean it hurts. Austere means things can move this way and it's okay, and things can move that way and it's okay. Temperature can move this way, the circumstances of life can move this way and that way, and it's flexible. Because you're not it's similar to this simplicity. You're not dependent upon circumstance to create a contentment of heart. And persons that have this quality of austerity, things can go this way, things can go that way, and it's okay. It has to do with some ballast that's inside, that it's okay. The ship can tilt this way, the ship can tilt that way, but there's ballast at the hold of the ship. Ballast in a shipping term is weight that's at the very bottom of the hull of the ship. So picture in your mind big ship crossing the ocean or a big body of water with big waves. So commonly they put extra weight in the hull. Sometimes they design ships so that the bottom has an extra weight attached to the bottom, like a big torpedo type thing. Just so if the movements of the wind and the waves rocks the boat, it stays stable because there's ballast at the bottom. So austerity is like that, having the capacity to be steady in your mind when some abnormal situation comes. It's really hot, or it's really cold, or it's really this, or it's really that, and it's a symptom of the quality of goodness. Persons in the quality of goodness, they like. There's this statement: austerity is the wealth of the Brahmins. Austerity is the wealth of a person in the mode of goodness. A person in passion, something else, is the symbol of wealth. And person who's a merchant, something else, is a symbol of wealth. But for a person in the mode of goodness, austerity is the wealth. And it can overpower someone else who has some other kind of wealth, because there's a lot of strength and resiliency when one has these two capacities, simplicity and austerity. Here's, for those of you that like to learn language, here's some Sanskrit terms: Srishti and Drishti. They sound a little like. Srishti commonly has to do with creating something, building something, making something. Like, it's used in relation to the universe, or building a whatever, building a house. It's just building a future for yourself. Srishti, creation. And Drishti has to do with the act of seeing. So those, just the direct meaning can be something quite different, creating and seeing. But in this context, resiliency in the time of reversals, Srishti has to do with circumstances that life presents before us. It's created, and we didn't necessarily ask for this Srishti, but here it is. And then Drishti, as how you perceive that which circumstances that present themselves before you in your life. And resiliency requires having a capacity to distinguish reality in any given situation. Perception is the drishti idea, but we don't always perceive things in the right perspective. We perceive things according to our orientation. A common example that Prabhupada would give is cold water in the winter is uninviting. It's unpleasant. And cold water in the hot summer, it's very pleasant. It's the same water, same temperature, same object, but it's perceived differently according to circumstance. So there's the Srishti idea. The circumstances come, and we're not always perceiving reality, we're perceiving how it's hitting our senses. So drishti, a deeper sense for resiliency, there has to be a deeper sense of being able to perceive things beyond our conditioning, beyond the limited and temporary. Here's a classic example. Classic example is perceiving a rope to be a snake. Now, with the assumption, it's a classic one in Vedic dialogue. But a rope is a rope and a snake is a snake. And a rope doesn't cause fear, but a snake or perceiving a snake may cause fear. When in fact it's not, if it's just a rope in a coil. Here's a little graphic you got to watch because it's going to start to move. It looks like a rope, but then it starts to move and you think, oh, it's a snake. But it's not a snake, it's a rope. Here's another practical example, a life example. We narrated this yesterday evening. It's the Chinese farmer story. It's a nice story. Maybe some of you have heard it before. It starts like this. You've heard it before? Yesterday. Okay. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer. And the Chinese farmer, unlike the other farmers in his village, he had a horse. So the other farmers came to visit him and said, oh, what good fortune. You have a horse. And so you can plow your fields much more easily than those of us that don't have a horse. What good fortune. And the Chinese farmer said, this was his drishti. The srishti keeps changing, but his drishti, he's got ballast in his ship. It stays the same. Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say? Time passed, the horse ran away. And the farmers then, the other villagers came to the farmer and said, oh, what misfortune, your horse ran away. Now you have to plow your fields like the rest of us. And his reply was, he was a Taoist. Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say? Some time passed. The horse came back. And when the horse came back, the horse came back with several other horses. Wild horses just followed him back. And the villagers said, oh, what good fortune. Now you have not only one horse, but several horses, and so it'll be really easy for you to plow your fields. And the farmer said, good fortune, ill fortune, who can say? When his son was trying to train the wild horses to plow the fields, he fell off the horse and broke his leg. And the villagers came and said, oh, what ill fortune. Your son broke his leg. And the farmer said, good fortune, ill fortune, who can say? And then, after some time, the Chinese government went to war. So they passed a conscription act, and all able-bodied men between this age and that age had to join the army. And so the government people came to the village, and then all the young men were taken away except the farmer's son because he had a broken leg. And then the other villagers came and said, oh, good fortune, ill fortune. Oh, no, excuse me. They said, what good fortune, your son didn't have to go to war. And he said, good fortune, ill fortune. Who can say? Circumstances may change. So there's different messages with this, the Chinese farmer being a Taoist. He's not just responding to the circumstances. He's waiting to see, circumstances may change, and quite often they change. Almost always they change. Maybe a little slowly, but in time, it's all going to change. The saying is there, one thing that's permanent is change. And, you know, if one has another purpose besides bringing objects to your senses and becoming the enjoyer of those objects of the senses, if there's some other purpose besides that one, then the changing of circumstances doesn't cause disturbance. So resiliency helps, mode of goodness helps resiliency, and if there's a higher purpose besides temporary senses and sense object meeting and saying yummy, it's nice. A nice example of this, some of you college students probably know who Viktor Frankl is. There's a photograph of him in his ripe old age. And he wrote this book that's been published some number of times, 17, 18 times, because it's a very powerful book. And another reason it's really skinny. It's not like too big. And he wrote it published it in 1946, which is right after World War II, which is when he was released from a Nazi concentration camp. He was a Jewish man who was in 2 different Nazi concentration camps and survived. And while he was in the concentration camp, he writes that one of the things that helped protect him and his sanity was he was planning afterwards, because his profession was a psychiatrist, was to help people understand how to overcome negative experiences and maintain strength inside. Resiliency. And he says that one of the things that helped him, he is sure, he's certain, was his higher purpose of being a teacher of how to deal with negative circumstances. Here is one of the statements in his book. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. What's that? The last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Many times people feel victimized by circumstances that are the unpleasant ones. Or the other is to be celebrate when good circumstances come, and please understand, because things always change, when good fortune comes, around the corner is misfortune. Guaranteed. When both good fortune, ill fortune, they vacillate. Now, there's factors, we talked about that yesterday evening, why bad things happen to good people. It has to do with our past actions are bringing some commensurate corresponding reaction, karma. The action part is going to change because actions and choices have changed. But there's freedom. One doesn't have to be victimized by circumstances. One has a freedom in any one thing that can't be taken. This is a resiliency power. You can't take away someone's freedom, and someone feels that sense of freedom of choice, specifically, not let me out of the circumstance, but the attitude in addressing the circumstance. That's the drishti factor. This one way is saying it in Sanskrit, the other way is saying it in German, I guess. I don't know if he wrote it in English. Attitude towards life's stress creating adversity. Here's another quote. There's several. You can look it up online, and it's a powerful book. There is also purpose in life which is almost barren of both creation and enjoyment, and which admits but one possibility of high moral behavior. What's that? Man's attitude, again, it's the word attitude, to his existence an existence restricted by external forces. There are times in life when external forces are dictating something that's quite unpleasant, and you can't change the circumstance. There are situations. In his case, he's in a concentration camp. He can't change the circumstance. He didn't try to escape. He can't change the circumstance. And what was happening, he describes in the book, was awful, inhuman. And there he is. What's the purpose? So he describes he had a purpose. And the purpose was he wanted to help people on the other side of the war who were trapped in circumstances that were very, very unpleasant. Nothing you can do about the circumstance, and maintain a strong positive attitude, an attitude towards or to one's existence. And that's, he calls it a high moral behavior. One can call it a mode of goodness view about life. And I don't know anybody that's not had some misfortune come to them. Everyone has had misfortune and unpleasant things, and sometimes it's one thing after the next thing after the next thing seems to come like an avalanche. So where are we going to get that strength to deal with the avalanche? Or just be knocked over by it? Or crushed by it, or whatever? Where does that resiliency come from? So he's indicating, one can say mode of goodness, or an attitude to existence. Even the circumstances of existence are unchangeable. There's several other. If you have a friend that seems to be caught in mild or even moderate kind of depression, it's very big in the world today. Statistics show that the chart goes like this over a period of time since the 60s. Read the book to them, or read some of these passages to them, or ask them to read the book, or read the book together and discuss it, and because there's power in what he's having to say. This is the resiliency in the face of reversal. Another common sense statement here: physical strength is measured by what we can carry. Inner strength is measured by what we can bear. So inner strength and resiliency. Here's something directly from Krishna Book. Some of you may know about Krishna Book. It's the story of Krishna's life written in one book. And when he was young, this is chapter 2, there's some description about Balaram, his brother. Just quoting directly, one cannot attain the supreme platform of self-realization without being sufficiently favored by Balaram. Balaram is Krishna's brother. Bala does not mean physical strength. One must have the spiritual strength, which is infused by Balaram or Sankarsana. If you want resiliency, get close to Balaram. He's got lots of strength, and strength that can be inside. And when there's some stretching circumstance, you have strength inside. And when the circumstance changes, you're back to being unstretched, and then some more circumstance. So just stay connected. This is yoga. Stay connected to Balaram because he's the source of spiritual strength. And that's the platform of self-realization. That's what this text is showing. Next is, some of you like reading Bhagavad Gita, and if not, I hope you get to the stage where you like reading Bhagavad Gita. This is in the final chapter of, in the final chapter of Bhagavad Gita. you'll find this nice verse, Brahmabhuta prasanatma na sochati na kankshati samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. So, Brahmabhuta means to know who you are, self-realization. And one who comes to that stage of knowing who they are, knowing who you are means you have nothing to do, your identity has nothing to do with the temporary. We have temporary surrounding us. Our body and our mind are also temporary, and the objects around us are temporary, and the circumstances which we can't change, they're temporary. But that's not us. And one who is situated in the consciousness of self or self-realization, that's Brahmabhuta, there are three symptoms. First one, there's a happiness within. It's strength. And happiness is a strength. Happiness within, so much so that the second point is one isn't hankering for something outside of yourself to find happiness. Or something that's outside of yourself disappears and you're not lamenting, like the Chinese farmer. No sochati, no kangsati. Neither hankering nor lamenting. Why? Because there's something inside that's so substantial. Now, we don't know what the Chinese farmer was feeling, but he wasn't feeling stressed out by duality, by good fortune, ill fortune. And the third quality is seeing all living entities with equal vision, seeing all living entities equally. Sama means equal. Sarvabhuteshu means all living entities. So you can certainly distinguish forms of life. Prabhupada's example is don't go and embrace a tiger. I saw some kids playing outside in the backyard today. They got a big dog. It's like big like a horse. It's a big guy. And there's a little girl playing with this big dog. I mean, the big dog could just gobble her up and she's finished. But she was, pulling around like a leash, and he was happy being pulled around like by a leash, and jumping when she said jump, and stopping when she said stop, and he was happy and she was happy. But sometimes dogs aren't like that. Sometimes dogs they show their teeth and they want to show you who's boss. There are different types of dogs and different types of people. But so behaviors are different, but the living entity within, there's a sameness of the living entity within, a likeness of the living entity within. Packaging is different. That's quite okay. There's all varieties of packaging, not only amongst humans, all the forms of life, species, and everything else. We discussed this a little bit yesterday. There's all kinds of diversity out there. But inside that diversity, there's something, and one who's on this platform of self-realization, they see that something, or at least they can understand that something, I'm like this other entity, the little girl and the big dog, and they were having fun, although very different. So that's part of the strength that comes from Balaram, in case you wanted to see what he looked like. There's Balaram. Got a plow, got a nice smile. He wears a blue dhoti. And Balaram's name is right there in our Hare Krishna mantra. It's Hari Rama, Hari Rama, 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 Hari, Hari. It's a call to Balaram for strength, to be engaged in our real activity as opposed to the temporary and illusory ones. That's the meaning. It's an appeal like that. There are other, in principle, simple ways of finding strength beyond our own strength, just like a small child holding the hand of their father. Now, a nice example. Supposing a son and his father are walking down the street. The son is holding the hand of his father, and here comes a big dog. Woof, woof, woof. Rawr, rawr, rawr. And the child, of course, could be afraid, but the child may be undisturbed because he knows my father's holding my hand and he's always protected me. Here's a little story because it's time for a story. Some years ago, when it wasn't COVID, I was visiting some colleges in India. And early morning, um, early morning, we were at the place where I was staying. It had Mangal Arti, before the sun rose. We had Mangal Arti at 4 o'clock. It was nice. And I was surprised how many students came from Mangal Arti at 4 o'clock. Students coming from Mangal Arti at 4 o'clock. And then, so from 4:30 for like an hour and a half or so, it was cool in the morning. So I went for a walk on campus. And those of you that are from India or have been to India, one of the phenomena in India is from time to time you find street dogs or stray dogs. Here in America we find homeless people, and in India you find homeless dogs, and they kind of hang out together, and they're real territorial. You come near them, you're not like you don't want their territory, but you come near them, and they let you know, this is our territory. So I was going for a walk, japa walk, early in the morning, and walked by the dog place, and they would, one would go woof woof, and the other guys echoed. Those of you from India, the whole scene. And then, just keep walking, and they put their heads back down and go to sleep. And you come by again, they do the same thing. Like this is they're really territorial. So one morning, as I was walking past the pack of dogs or their territory, one professor came, and the professor was walking his little white French poodle, and the French poodle could have been a meal for those guys. He was just a little guy, little poodle, little white poodle, and the dogs, they heard the professor coming, and they saw the dog, and it wasn't just woof woof. He stood up, and started barking and growling, and the others came forward barking and growling and showing their teeth. So the professor did two things. He had a stick, like a pretty sturdy stick, not a little stick, pretty sturdy stick, and he held the stick up in the air and showed it to the dogs. And the other hand, he picked the poodle up. It was on a leash. He put the poodle under his arm. And he showed the stick to the dogs. I watched. And the dogs looked at the stick. They looked at each other, looked at the stick, looked at each other, shrugged their shoulders, and went back and lied down. And the little poodle is looking up at the professor, licking his cheek, and his little tail was wagging back and forth like this. So, strength beyond your strength. When you have protection by someone who's capable of protecting, and Balaram is capable of protecting, then you have strength beyond your own strength. And although we know that, sometimes we forget it, like quite often we forget it, that there's a strength beyond our own strength. And so the process of yoga, this is an image of a hawk, by the way, is keep your eyes focused, keep your attention focused, keep your ears focused, keep your consciousness focused on that strength that's beyond your strength. Not only when some reversal comes or some mishap comes or some misfortune comes, because that's not, that's not that's not yoga. Is circumstantial created. Real yoga is where your consciousness reaches this position of a higher state, like the neither hankering or lamenting, na sochati na kangsati. Stay fixed. That's yoga. Fixed in this place of higher consciousness, or phased in the strength beyond your own strength. Fix your consciousness on who you really are, and those sources that are sources of well-being, goodness, power, strength, inner strength, and stay there, regardless of what's going on the outside, just like the Chinese farmer. Circumstances change, the Srishti changes, and Drishti doesn't change because there's inner strength. And this is the last slide. I like this word, Deera. Deera is described in chapter 6 Bhagavad Gita. So many years ago, I was listening to Prabhupada speak on chapter 6 Bhagavad Gita, and he gave the following explanation of Deera. I remember it very well, so many years ago. Deera means even when there's cause for disturbance, one remains undisturbed. Very simple definition. Then he went on to say, when there's no cause for disturbance and one remains undisturbed, that's not so significant. That's not Deera. But when there's cause for disturbance and one remains undisturbed, that's Deera. So resiliency is assisted by becoming a Deera. And Deera means all these points that we've been making. This is our last slide. So ready for comments and questions in a moment. The process of yoga is to help us come to that stage where consciousness becomes fixed, like that image of the hawk, where the consciousness becomes fixed in this place of goodness or place beyond goodness, place of higher consciousness. And the world outside you can change, will change, and that's okay. It's sometimes disturbing, sometimes good fortune, sometimes ill fortune. That's okay. Remaining undisturbed, even in those disturbing circumstances, which sounds like a contradiction. But if the mind can remain undisturbed when it has a place of shelter, like the little poodle in the professor's arm. I mean, when he wasn't in his arm, he was also quite content, just with his little tiny leg keeping up with the professor as he was walking along. He was enjoying. Or like that big dog in the backyard with the little kids today. I mean, the guy was like a horse, little kids. But he was having fun and they were having. So, regardless of circumstance, know who you are. And that knowing who you are means, at least it's within the real knowing who you are, is knowing your higher identity, spiritual identity, beyond all the limited and temporary things that life is made up of. So we deal with the limited and temporary in the responsible ways, capable ways. But the main business isn't neglected while doing that. The main business is to know who you are. That's the yoga system, to know who you are. And it builds this inner Deera capacity. You deal with things as they come, but doesn't cause disturbance. So that's our topic for this evening, resilience in the face of reversals. So I don't know how many students are with us, but you have the facility because it's not Zoom, it's live stream. So you can, or YouTube, you can send questions in and we'll read them. I guess that's how it's going to work. I have a few people sitting here in the room, and if you folks don't have something you'd want to ask right now, we'll ask people in the room to speak up. We have something over here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. So my question is on the patience. So what is the significance of patience in Krishna consciousness?
Biggest what?
Significance of patience.
Patience.
Yeah, in Krishna consciousness.
The significance of patience.
Yeah, yes, Maharaj. And how much patient I must be with my own sadhana and progress, with my family members' sadhana.
Don't be too patient.
Yeah. And if
don't do too many questions at once.
Okay.
Just do, they're nice questions. What's the role of keep the microphone? What's the role of patience in sadhana? Well, something that, according to you're familiar with this, but there may be some people who are listening that aren't. There's a teaching given by Rupa Goswami, one of the great personalities in our line. Rupa Goswami teaches, before patience, first and foremost, comes enthusiasm. First and foremost, enthusiasm for what? Enthusiasm for, we just leave it simple and call it this place of higher consciousness. And then there's a means to get there, but the enthusiastic to get there says that you're going to be very involved in the process to get there because you're enthusiastic to get there. There's an objective. And enthusiastic to get there, now comes patience. How long do I have to wait till I get there? And you have to wait as long as it takes. That's how long you have to wait. In other words, it may be in our modern circumstance, we touched on this yesterday, people want results like instantaneously or at least swiftly. And something that requires patience, well, let me turn the channel. But, because we're speaking to some students, you also have an objective. And let me ask you as students, or you people in the room, how many hours of academic pursuit have we invested in our lives? A lot of hours. And how quickly has the result come for those investment of hours in our academic pursuits in our life? Slow. Really slow. But it's one of the lessons of life that good things don't come quickly. Things that come quickly, that's good, but they may not be the best things in life. Let me give another little story, because it's story time again. Georgia is called the Peach State, right? Yeah. So it's on the license plates, peaches. So when I was growing up, once upon a time I was a young boy, and my father was kind of an outdoorsy type person, and the family's kind of an outdoorsy type person. And one of the things that he did was he planted a peach tree in the backyard. So I was a little boy, and I remember standing there looking up at the peach tree and saying, "Where are the peaches?" And I was told, "Be patient." Okay, so I was patient. Next year, "Where are the peaches?" Be patient. So, how patient do I have to be? Come on, where's the peaches? So the third year, some little green things came out, but didn't get beyond the little green things. And I was like disappointed. But the fourth year, there were like really fantastic peaches, and we had a peach party when it was this peach season. And then I don't know how old that peach tree must be. Maybe it's already kicked the bucket or something, but I'm sure it produced peaches for quite some time. It takes time for peach trees to make peaches, and for in our yoga practice, for the results that we wish to achieve to come. Now, we're likely to get some hints of what's likely to come from our own experience, as well as from teachings and observing in the lives of those that are accomplished, mature in their yoga practice, what qualities they exhibit, and so forth and so on. So good things don't come quickly and easily and cheaply. Good things take time. So be patient, but don't lose the enthusiasm while you're being patient. Don't be too patient. In that sense, don't lose your enthusiasm. So the combination of the two, patience and enthusiasm, or enthusiasm and patience, it's sustained by confidence in the process that you're following. So it's real important. Your question was how important. It's real important. But not the misunderstanding of patience is becoming complacent. Maintain enthusiasm. Now, the next set of things you were asking was,
Yes, Maharaj. So, how much patient I must be with my own sadhana and then progress in Krishna consciousness?
well, with your own sadhana, you as much as it takes. You continue to be as enthusiastic as possible, and you're with confidence. You remain patient. Common experience, I'm sure you've been your experience. There's a sine curve. It goes up, and after some time it goes down, and it stays down for a while. And then after some time it goes up, and then it goes down. So it's the sine curve. So when it's up or when it's down, remain patient. Remain patient, but remain enthusiastic. And by doing those two things, gradually the amplitude of the sine curve diminishes, and the x-axis starts to slope up, and the y-axis, the y curvature, starts to diminish.
Yes, Maharaj. So, continuation to that is how much patience I must be with the progress of sadhana of my family members, or like.
Completely patient. I mean, you show by good example, and family members will be inspired or not. But be very patient. Just be a good example. Be a good example.
And at the same time, like if we are preaching to others, how how much patience we should have, because sometimes
Same.
some.
I mean, some people are in the fast lane. I was just in Houston before coming here, and we had a japa retreat, Labor Day weekend japa retreat. It was all virtual. And then during the sharing session afterwards at the end, just as a for example, anecdotal. But there was one lady unmuted herself on the Zoom call and shared, this is her first time, blah, 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 blah. She liked her experience, blah, blah, blah. She wants to join. They have a japa call that starts at 3 o'clock in the morning and goes till 7 with a little class in between. She joined the class a few minutes before 3 o'clock, the next 3 mornings. And she heard, listen to this, she heard during the japa seminar, one of the ways to help stay focused in chanting is chant the first Hare clearly and distinctly. Because if not doing so, it's hard to keep your mind focused on the rest of the mantra. So the person that's the facilitator is the former temple president, Shamsundar, you know him? So he said for the first half hour, she was really loud with the first hare. But he didn't say anything purposely. And within a half an hour, she figured it out. I'm like chanting hooray so loud the others can't hear themselves. So she settled down. But she was there from 3:00 till 5:30. I mean, that's really amazing for a first-time person. 3:00, 3:00, first-time person. No, some people aren't like that. Some people are not like that. So let's just continue setting a good example. Just continue setting a good, and you're not attached to the result. And you're just encouraged. Just be a sunshine, and be very sweet like honey, and attract you crack bees.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Maharaj?
Yeah.
So you said like we have to lead by example. So most of the times I feel like I concentrate only on my sadhana. I don't concentrate on leading by example.
That's where it starts. But when something listen to this. When something touches your heart, you're going to want to share it with other people because it touched your heart. So work on having it touch your heart. That's good. But something that will help touch your heart is when you try to give to others. You'll find that out also from practical experience. Because I don't have the capacity, or I don't have the strength, or I don't have the wisdom, or I don't have the something. So let me get more so that I can give. I mean, one helps the other, vice versa. But let it touch your heart. And reaching out to others will help it touch your heart if you're doing it properly. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Sure. Do we have anything online? Okay, let's do the online. We'll come back to in the room.
This question is by Amara Mataji. How to continue to be compassionate and friendly to the one who is not choosing Krishna?
Okay. Are there any questions from students? None. Okay. Who haven't chosen Krishna? Well, you see, the soul. This is the samak sarveshu bhuteshu. How to is to come to the spiritual platform. And if you haven't come to the spiritual platform, you won't. You'll see the external. You'll see, oh, they haven't something. So now you're not on the spiritual platform. So what to do? You don't pretend you're on the spiritual platform, but you can follow the example of elevated persons who are on the spiritual platform, and to follow them, not to imitate them, but to follow them. You try to reach out. With discrimination, what's appropriate and what and who and when and how, etc. You be just a little discriminating, but you follow the example of those that are on a higher platform than you are. And gradually, by exercising that compassion muscle, it becomes your quality in contemplation of those that have it. Okay. No students. Okay. Let's give the microphone back to her.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. My question is like all our lives are predestined, and
No, wait a minute. All our lives are predestined. I'm sorry. I have to hit the pause button on that one.
Okay, bro.
Do you mean to say that everything that's going to happen in my life is predestined?
Like what I understood from, maybe I understood it wrong. Like the life, all the life, like whatever is going to happen is already predestined.
No. Am I a devotee because it was predestined that I become a devotee? No. I was given an opportunity, and then I had some choices to make. And that's things are not predestined. There are events that come our way because of our past good, bad mix of activities. Those events will come our way. The opportunity will come your way. And then you make choices.
Yeah, that was my question, Maharaj. Like, if it is already predestined, how free will
You have free will.
make?
No. So it's not that everything is predestined. There are events that are going to be influenced. Events are influenced because of our past free will choices. And here comes the event coming down your path of, as you're moving down the path of life today. And then you have, n number of opportunities to make choices how you're going to respond to those events. I mean, the sun rises and sets. That's passage of time. As time passes, the energy moves, and as the energy moves, we experience things.
Thank you, Maharaj.
And we're making choices as we're experiencing.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says Dheeras tatra na mohyati. So a sober person is not bewildered by such a change.
Yeah, Deera.
So that Dheeras is also resilience, I'm assuming, right?
The Deera is also
Resilience.
Oh yeah.
So is the underlying qualification for resilience self-realization?
There are different ways of describing the same thing. And that's one of the ways of describing the same thing. How's that for an answer? I mean, because one could say, along the lines of what we were speaking, the fundamental principle for resiliency is you get spiritual strength from Balaram. That's another way of saying the same thing. Because a self-realized person has spiritual strength from Balaram. So you can emphasize this or that or some other aspect. So they're all right. Or different ones are right. Multiple ones are right. But, then you take the word self-realization. And what does that mean? You can start unpacking. I just heard a class today, a recording of a class. Prabhupada was unpacking what self-realization means. And there's a lot of stuff in there. It's like taking a cotton ball and start pulling out the strands of the cotton and then holding up the strands and then putting it back together. You got a cotton ball. There's many parts to self-realization. So is it yes? The answer to your question is, short answer is yes. And there's other ways of understanding or seeing the same thing. One who has received the mercy of Krishna is resilient. One who has received the mercy of the spiritual master and Krishna that's the fundamental principle of resilience. One who has bhakti in their life, that's the potency for resiliency. Many ways of saying the same thing. But self-realization is a real succinct way. So yes. Yes. Mataji, you've got something? You're taking notes. Okay. Okay.
Krishna Maharaj. So, when we see devotees around us, some devotees they progress very faster. Like they read a lot of books, they can memorize, they can do a lot of
slower. And why is that?
Not wise that Maharaj. So I tend to compare myself with them and then feel insecure, and that's one part. Sometimes like other devotees, family members, they do a lot of service or they progress faster. So I tend to compare my family with them, and then I'll feel them insecure. So that causes a friction. So sometimes I don't, and then at the same time, I see that it's individuals' enthusiasm or a lot of other things involved in progress, and I'll try to answer myself, but I do not know how. What should be the right way to perceive this? Like, how? What should be the right way to look at this? Like,
Appreciation. I mean, if you have association of advanced devotees, you're fortunate. Take their association and hang out and be in service to them and feel, wow, this is how I'm going to get to make advancement, is to be with such people and serve them. There's what you described. This past weekend was Labor Day weekend. So on Monday, we had a youth session. I'm just sharing because it's related to your question. And because they're youth, I didn't just give a Bhagavad Gita class or something. We listened to a TED Talk, and the person who was the speaker of the TED Talk wasn't a Hare Krishna devotee. It was a lady, a researcher, storyteller lady named Brene Brown. And her message was, while people, the sense of contentment within an individual, she used the word connectivity, or their connection is strong. We would say Krishna consciousness. She was just saying connection. And when people don't feel that, her insight is it's shame. They feel I'm not good enough. That keeps them from feeling that Krishna consciousness or that sense of connectivity. So when you're feeling connectivity, fantastic, you have advanced devotees. Connectivity ki jai. Krishna consciousness is going to grow. But if I don't feel I'm not accepted, I'm unworthy, and all those emotions and self-perceptions. So her solution at the end of this whole thing was, I'm enough. In the eyes of Krishna, I'm enough. And the enough is I'm his part and parcel. And I'm in my capacity is X, and over there is somebody that's 10X. But my capacity, so be accepting of your capacity. Be happy that Krishna is accepting you. And you offer X. And when Krishna will make it 2X and 5X and 10X if he wants. But whatever it is, it is. And you make that offering to Krishna sincerely. And Krishna will smile. Because whatever acts you have, where'd you get it? Krishna gave it. And you're offering it to Krishna. Fantastic. What do you think?
yeah, yes, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
I'll give another example. Supposing there's a little girl and she's learning to bake. So she wants to bake cookies for you or for somebody that she has affection for. She bakes some cookies, offers them to Krishna, and they're kind of like crummy. And he brings the plate to you. I offered this to Krishna. Please accept them. How are you going to feel? It's a gesture of love. It's not a matter of how good she is at baking cookies, right? So you offer like that, with Krishna's accepting. You're offering. You offer it with love, and you by that effort, your skill in or the little girl's skill in baking is going to increase. I'm using that example because I just got a letter today from someone that's entering 8th grade. And she's not doing well with her chanting, but she's learning to bake. She was sharing she's learning to bake. Her mom is showing her, and she's even creating some. So that she wants to do that for Krishna. She was like really happy to share that with me. Fantastic. Not Krishna's judging her, or she's bad because she doesn't know how to bake. She's learning. She wants to bake for Krishna. So I use that example because of this exchange just today with an eighth grader. So you're not an eighth grader anymore. You are what you are. You offer to Krishna what you have to your capacity, and be happy. Don't be this mundane competition thing, comparing yourself to others thing, comparing your family to other family thing. It's all material. Don't get don't buy into Maya's game. Say no to Maya. Say yes to Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj. And one follow-up question, Maharaj. So when I had to think that this is my capacity, and at the same time not falling into the complacency, so how should I deal
You
with?
know the answer. It's a relationship. When you want to have a relationship with someone, you're investing in that relationship. You invest in the relationship, and this is the patience. It takes time for relationships, meaningful relationships, not cosmetic ones, but meaningful ones. It takes time. You offer with your heart. You're not going to be complacent because the relationship means something to you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Online.
This is a second question by Amara Mataji. How to reciprocate to mercy to our satisfaction?
This Amara, please stop asking these how-to questions, because my answer henceforward is going to be sadhu sangha. And then you can unpack sadhu sangha and you get the answer.
This question is by Sanchari Prabhu. Sanchari Mataji. What is the balance between confidence and humility in devotional service?
Oh, good question. Confidence in Krishna consciousness is confidence in Krishna. Confidence in material consciousness is confidence in yourself. Humility is I'm dependent because I'm very tiny, but I'm confident in Krishna. And so let me bake for Krishna. Let me strive to do for Krishna, although I'm not qualified, because I'm not just humble, I'm genuinely not qualified. And so I'm very tiny in relation to Krishna, and Krishna is very great. That's humility. But I'm confident that Krishna is kind, and he'll accept if I offer, because he said so. And I know that he's kind. So that's how the two fit in as qualities that aren't contradictory qualities: confidence and humility.
A follow up question. How does confidence manifest in devotion?
Steadiness. Meaning, because Krishna is steady. I'm confident in Krishna's kindness and his reciprocation. And based on that confidence, my efforts are steady. And based upon that effort that's steady, that's a sign, one of the signs of being confident in the reciprocation from Krishna. Certain. It's certain. There's always going to be these duality things or reversals. There's always going to be setbacks or reversals that happen. and we'll remain steady in the face of reversal. Doesn't mean that the situation is going to quickly change. Doesn't mean that. But I'm steady in my efforts because of confidence in Krishna. Okay, I think we're ready to wrap up. Anything else in the room? Okay. Thank you, Prabhupada ki. Jai. I have a different audience this evening than the last time I was here. Pandemic has got people worried. Okay. Okay, fine. Okay.